Hello, Daisy.
Hello, Shira.
Happy Wednesday. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Doing okay. It's
You
all
look nice
good.
and bright. You look nice and bright with your top today. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Isn't it almost springtime? Aren't we getting close to springtime somewhere?
It is, as a matter of fact, we are having record heat here in Las Vegas this
Oh,
weekend.
wow. How hot
Yeah,
is it going to
it's
be?
going to be three digits.
Already.
Yeah, I think California is doing the same thing too. Yeah,
Oh
there's
my
very,
gosh.
yeah.
Oh no, I can't. Okay. Let's get going because I'm so excited about our guest this week. And I want to get things moving. So hello everyone, welcome to the Glass House. It's really excited. Here we look at business from the inside and the outside to expose the gaps between what's embedded and what's actually embodied in the organizations and in the people. I am Shara Halixer. I am the founder of Engage 3P.
And I'm Daisy Watkins, founder of DW Concepts and LumaPath.ai.
Fantastic, Daisy. It's so good to see you. If you are new to us today, this is our 10th episode, which I cannot believe. I can't believe it. We are really appreciative that you're here with us. We know you have a lot of options to choose from, and we really don't take that lightly that you want to be with us. And we really love to make this a very engaging activity. So I'm getting better at this. I'm getting so much better at the technical stuff every week. I'm getting better. So we have the notes up. I can see your comments. We can respond to you. We really want to hear from you. We're looking at ways of making this even more interactive. Maybe taking it off LinkedIn, possibly, to try to make this more of a chat or other options to really be able to engage with everyone. But please give us your comments, your questions, because we want to hear from you. And before we get into it, let's just do a quick recap, Daisy, because I'm getting a lot of amazing feedback from our last episode with Helene Berkowitz. And it was such an honest conversation, and it leads well into this one as well. But what is it costing to stay quiet, specifically on LinkedIn? And when I watched it again, it just landed differently. You know, today we're talking about something that sits right at the center of why we built this show and why we're talking about it, right? And that's the gap between who you are and how you appear, right? And that's kind of what we've been leading into. That's a little bit about what we talked about last week with Helene. Who are you? How are you presenting yourself on LinkedIn or other social media? Who are you, right? And then what is that strategy? Like, how does that show up? What is technology doing with that, right? And there's really one place that shows up that almost nobody's talking about, honestly, and that's really in the career itself, right? So we've got kind of our social media, but at some point you've built an identity around the role that you're in. Maybe it's your company, your industry, a credential that you earned, right? We see those all the time on LinkedIn. And somewhere along the way, that identity has stopped being a description and it became maybe a definition of who you are.
Mm.
So as the markets have shifted, or you did, or both, I mean, it's like, what is the version of yourself that you are putting out there, that you've invested in, that the one that the world wants to recognize doesn't really fit what you've built? Like, it's such a confusing time, right? And most people would say that's a career problem. I'm going to say it's not a career problem. That's really what it is around being embedded versus embodied, around who you are and what your identity is that you're trying to build, right? So we want to talk about how that impacts career, how that impacts what you're trying to do with that career, and how we make you the most successful person you can be in what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense quite a bit. And actually, those are personal experiences that we both have for coming out of corporate and into the careers that
Yeah.
we have right now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. So, thank you. There's a second
Sure.
layer to that, too, by the way, Shira, and that's
Okay.
that people don't, most people in transition never see it coming. Okay. It's
Right.
not about how a hiring manager reads your story. It's also about how AI reads it. We gotta be real. It goes through a system now when you submit a resume, and there's a lot of frustration about people that are looking for jobs, people that get laid off. I am the most qualified. My resume matches it perfectly, but I'm not getting the phone call. So AI doesn't give you the benefit of the doubt, is the problem with that, right? It doesn't read between the lines, and it synthesizes patterns, really, it's what it's looking for. So if your pivot is framed with is consistent,
Mhm.
intentional across all surface, to occupy online, AI reads it as a gap. So there's a lot of conversations to be having, not a strength, not a revelation, not a reinvention, but it's just a gap. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it doesn't understand you. It's just it's a machine, right? So it reads certain things. Anyway, I call it the invisible pivot problem. You have done the work, but it still doesn't see you. So it's still telling you the old, still telling the old story, even though the context that you have in your head or the way you've written it, it's not intended to be that way, but it still is. So anyway, um, that's the next layer to that. So I'm decent, and this is the problem we're going to try to solve tonight, Sharon. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it really makes sense, right? And you talk about the gap. We're going to actually talk a little bit about that when we were prepping with Marie. That almost exact thing came up, which is, what is that difference, right? What is it that we think we are versus what we're presenting to the world, what versus what AI is seeing? Because all the ATSs and all the application tracking systems and all the software is talking about we're embedded with AI. That's how you're going to find the best talent. And yet we've all talked about the struggles that we've had around that. So, I think that gap is playing out inside organizations at every level, right? We're seeing it at the higher level, we're seeing it at the performance level, we're seeing it everywhere. And leaders, especially, have embedded their professional identity, right, around the story that they want to tell and how they're going to do it and the investment they've made in their career. So there's just all of this that's happening, and it's a crazy time for everybody right now. I think that the struggle is real. I think people are questioning, they're loving the talent. We talk about it. We love AI, but we're questioning the talent. What value is it bringing? So it's hard, right? It's a tough time. So let's get into it, because I think that there's a really great. We're going to get Marie up on the stage, talk to her about what she sees. And Marie is a strategic operations and capital market executive whose career spans investment banking, financial services, and real estate. At Credit Suisse, she held director level roles on the structured products and investment banking operations teams and helped launch a new operating entity that reached $4 billion in annual production. At Berkshire Hathaway, she drove $2.5 billion in annual production across 6 states while advancing digital technology and capital markets. And now she has her own consulting and advisory firm, and she works and partners with founders, investors, and executives on scale, on M&A, and capital alignment. So what makes Marie's story worth bringing to the Glass House is not the scale that she's operated at. It's that she made that pivot deliberately more than once, with full awareness of what she was leaving behind and what she was choosing to build instead in front. So, Marie, welcome to the Glass House. Love that. Hello.
I think we got you muted, Marie.
There you
Thanks for
go.
having me.
Thank you for being here. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So, big CV, right? I mean, amazing background. Do you want to just give us a little bit, in your own words, your story?
Yeah, it's I can't say that every step of the way throughout my resume. Like I look at my title, you look at your compensation and what you've achieved. You look at all the bullet points in your resume, like they spell achievements. But I can't say that every step of the way was intentional, and I think that there was a lot of good fortune. I had a lot of great mentors along the way, people who really supported me as I was ascending in my roles. I never thought that I would get to the place that I was, when I was at the pinnacle of my corporate career. But, when I moved away from my corporate career, what was interesting to me was like, I looked at my resume and it was like, all right, some of this has got to be portable, right? Some of this has got to be like, I should be able to translate this into other things. So, as I was making that change and a pivot towards consulting, it was, for me trying to kind of assess like have I really accomplished over the course of my career, and what would be meaningful to people that I would be serving in this new role. So it's been an interesting ride, and yeah, there's a lot of like numbers on paper, and yeah, those are the things that recruiters and companies get jazzed about. But I do think that the market's tough right now, and especially for people who come with a lot of experience. And we can certainly talk more about that
Yes.
because we were talking
Yeah.
before we got
Yeah.
on. So
Well,
yeah,
I think that's incredibly valid, right? I think that
Mhm.
we think that we've been told, right? Our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, it was about staying at a job forever. Certainly for our
Mhm.
grandparents, it was the gold watch, right? That was the pinnacle of a successful career, is being somewhere long enough to retire from that company at a specific age and get the gold watch. And that was so highly valued. I don't think that exists anywhere anymore. I don't think that there's even a question about that. And there was also, work your way up and then other things will be offered to you. I don't think that's true either anymore. I don't think that it's a linear approach. I don't think that, we titled this a pivoting your career at any age, because I don't think that it's just people over 40 or people over 50 that are saying it's time for me to do something else. I think this is happening at every age. And I think, Daisy, you brought up earlier today when we were talking, the workforce is spanning generations that it's never seen before.
Mhm.
People are working from early stages to much later in life. And
Mhm.
so it's a very different market across the board.
Yeah. And the technology is changing, and then the way the generations also communicate very differently. They have different views, just like we thought we had different views from our parents, from the boomers, right, to Gen X, and then the millennials, and then the Gen Z. So think about us also as a leader or as an organization, all these different age groups, different generations that you're bringing in, and how that's going to affect your business, and how all these things are changing. We're not just talking about age, but even at this age, you still have to embrace a lot of the things that are that are changing. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. It's no different than the the younger generation, where they have to learn how to think and learn how to be strategist, as they get into these roles of even in technology. Because if you really are embracing AI, you have to have some sort of strategic mind to work with it, as opposed to just using it as a tool for creatives, or using it as a tool just because it's wow, you know what I mean? So to be really successful in switching careers, there's a lot of changes you have to go through, not just the narrative that you have to bring the context to the switch that you're doing, similar to a big switch to title from what I'm doing right now is healthcare staffing, to all of a sudden I'm doing marketing and AI. It seems like it's so off, but if you really, like Marie was saying, what can you take from what are transferable skills? What are your experiences? What is your real, your passion, all that type of stuff needs to tell that story on your next what we call title, but it isn't. It's really just a different task, if you want to look at it that way. But where society has always looked at it as like a recruiter needs to look at certain things, needs to look at certain tasks or job descriptions to match the job description within the organization. So internally, those needs, and yeah, I let you speak to that, Shira. How we look at things need to also change internally versus also compared to what we see on the outside. As a recruiter, we look at it from the outside, basically, right, through your resume, looking at it. So there's a lot of things and I'm very interested in how Marie pivoted to all these, and how she still maintained her entity in all the changes that she's gone through. So thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the generations, and I'll admit I'm Gen X, right? And we were the generation where, yeah, you put your head down, you get tapped on the shoulder, and somebody says, "Hey, you get more responsibility. We might not give you an increase right now, but you're going to get more responsibility." And you gladly nodded your head, and you're like, "Hey, that's a badge of honor. I'm excited to enter this new realm of responsibility." But there's something to be learned from every generation. So that's something that I hold very, very important. I've got Gen Z kids, and so they're entering the workforce at this point. And one of the things it's really interesting is like they're able to advocate for themselves a lot more. They're more vocal in terms of what they need, what kind of balances they need. And, and that's actually a great thing to see. So I would say that, from a, like from a workforce perspective, there is something to be learned from every generation. And on the topic of AI, I think there's a lot of embedded fear in AI because of this, it's replacing jobs and so forth. But, you've got to ride that wave. And I think that one of the, the big things in terms of, when you're in any job, regardless of how old you are, you've got to understand relevancy, right? And so what's relevant now? But you know what? That relevancy of AI could change dramatically in another 10 to 15 years. I mean, who knows what that's going to look like? But I'm an advocate of AI. I see the value of it. But one of the things I will say is that with the use of AI, one thing that AI cannot replace is ownership and accountability. So if you are working for someone, you're leveraging AI, and I do it all day long. But in the end, that output, that deliverable to a client is from me. So it's up to me to ensure that whatever I'm producing is correct. It's been vetted. So there's room for AI in anything that you're doing today, but just know that you are the owner and you're the one that's accountable. You can't sit there and blame the machine for the output. So
I had a conversation earlier today with an old friend and colleague, and we haven't spoken in so long, and it was amazing to reconnect. We just picked up where we left off practically. He's in the discovery business. He's been in legal technology for many, many years. He's also a lawyer. And I told him, I said, oh, there's this wives' tale or this, urban myth of all these lawyers who are using AI and they're submitting papers to the court and they're not they're not doing the work that needs to be done to vet the sites, and they're submitting things to the court and they're wrong. And he said, oh, that's not an urban myth. He said, there are thousands of these being reported. He said, in our day, you had to go to the library. We didn't even have LexisNexis and Westlaw that they was even allowed to be the thing that you had to go to the library and do the site checking and verify that what you thought was true and make sure that it's up to date, et cetera. So to your point, yes, this is your work product. This is what an individual is handing over. So I was shocked because I thought that was kind of an urban myth and that wasn't really true. And he said, it's absolutely true. It's happening all the time. The courts are talking about it. I think, and he got into this whole thing. He's such a tech guy, and he started talking about quantum computing, and I lost my mind. He said, it's coming in 2 years. I said, I don't even know what this is. I can't. I'm like, I'm not ready. He said, we'll talk about it later. I said, yeah, that's good. What you said though earlier about the trajectory of your career and getting tapped on the shoulder and people finding you and saying, hey, come do this. I related to that because my career on paper makes absolutely no sense in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's two things. I think it's partly me because I'm inherently curious about other things. I am also a risk taker in the sense that if something looks really interesting, I'm going to go do it. And I think it would be fun. And I'm constantly looking to do something new. I think, and like you, I had amazing people around me who said, hey, come do this. This looks interesting, right? When I was in my first law firm, somebody came to me and said, hey, you want to get into legal recruiting? And I was like, huh? What do you mean? Why would I want to do that? And then that one conversation turned into a shift that I didn't expect. So I think that's really interesting that you've experienced the same thing. Daisy, I think you would say the same. I mean, you just said you have these very different careers. Where did that bring you to where you are now, right? How did you kind of do that additional pivot to being your own boss and having your own consultancy?
Well, it's funny, at the time when you're kind of moving through your career and you're young, you're so eager and willing to take on whatever anybody puts in front of you. And actually being that yes woman to a certain degree helped my career because it exposed me to things that maybe, like I would not have considered for myself. So it's taking on the additional projects, taking on, being part of bigger teams, working internally with your existing job. But even as I made changes through my career and moved companies, I had to look at it as, what else would this job be giving me that is, different than what I've done before? So it wasn't so much like I was looking for always being in the same role, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. So I had to look for like a little bit of a growth pattern in those next roles. And for anybody kind of moving through their career, that's what I would say is like, how do you round out your resume really well? And so fast forward all these years later, it took me to this place where I've amassed a pretty significant amount of skill set. But in the latter years of my career, I was in pretty senior level roles, right? So one of the things that I had to do when I pivoted to consulting was that I had to activate those areas of my brain and my skill set that haven't been activated in a very long time. So this is down to my analytic skills, using Excel for modeling, design skills, creating presentations, websites, like doing these things that were very, very tactical that I probably hadn't touched in maybe like 15 years. So, so it's become this like learning process for me, but I think it's exciting because, hey, look, technology's changed, and this was my way, this is my foray to kind of get in spaces that, honestly, like I hadn't been doing for a long time. So that's the one thing. It's like, as you kind of transcend through your career, sometimes you end up in places that could be like really personally stagnant for you. So again, it's like, challenge yourself and ask yourself, hey, how am I going to activate myself for the next chapter of my career?
I love that. We are getting some great comments. Daisy, do you mind if we read a few of them? Because our
No,
friend
go ahead.
Laura, friend of the pod, Laura's here, and said, has really, I think, a really great point, which is questions for leaders. How are they engaging with their teams to understand aspirations and what's really possible, right? And I think that, Marie, you spoke to it earlier. When you have great leaders, when you have great mentors, when you have people who are looking out for you, that makes a huge difference, because that is really where I think people get opportunity if they're not as comfortable about reaching out themselves to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And and part of like leadership is, there is, when you're a leader, an executive leader for a large organization, large like enterprise, there's a balance there, right? You've got to do things in support of the organization's bigger goals. You're also, you also have to advocate for people. If you want people to be really engaged and part of your team, there's always also a human element to all the tough decisions that you've got to make as a leader. So one of the I would say probably like the number one thing that, this was something that came up in some of the notes, right, was, what does the classroom not teach you about, being in a corporate role or leadership? And really what it comes down to is it does not teach you how to people navigate, right? Like you've got to learn that over time. So, how to really, work towards a higher EQ, right? Some of these things are just like, they're not really talked about in the classroom. I would argue that most business schools out there should have several requisite courses in psychology, because how to understand people and what their motivations and their ambitions and their fears are. They bring that and carry that into the workplace every day. So that is something that I would say, like navigating people and really kind of understanding, hey, what's their ambition for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and how, as the leader, are you going to help them get there? Any kind of like impact that you want to leave on people is it's great for people to kind of thank you 10 years later or 15 years later, just even for the conversation. So
Right.
I think that keeping an eye on people is a great thing. And you never know, you might need them later on, right?
So Franz said, I swear, Daisy, I'm gonna use you. I don't know if you have the comments up, so I'm trying to be good with the comments. But Franz said, and it's so true. How you engage with your team is largely determined by the internal programs that shape what you notice and how you interpret situations and how one prioritizes. Right. So it talks about culture. What is an organization doing? How are they aligned to that type of environment? That's going to be, without a doubt, that's critical.
Yeah. Well, we can go ahead. I think there is a question here from Nicole Shira.
Oh yeah, I love this. So Nicole's asking, hi Nicole. Marie, what advice do you have for women who are, this is a great one, that are primary caregivers, financial providers for their families, balancing the risk of pivoting against against staying in a stale or unrewarding position? That's huge.
It is huge, and I would say that you have to, develop a roadmap, right? So when we think about pivoting, in the world of business, pivoting could mean course corrections to, from a strategic standpoint, from a product standpoint. And when you take a look at your own career, you're going to do what any good business does out there, right? You're going to evaluate where you are at this time and why would it make sense to change gears. So, maybe the market has shifted, maybe the job landscape has changed, but you have to also ensure that the change doesn't alter the fundamentals of who you are and how you got here, right? So I would say that evaluation has to take place because there's other considerations and other factors. You're a primary caregiver. You could be the sole breadwinner of your family. You've got to take into consideration what's the impact on your financial picture, right? So
Right.
some individuals don't have the luxury of waiting, right? Some
Right.
people have to take action pretty quickly. I found myself in that same boat too. So from a financial perspective, I needed to work quickly and tactically to get to a point where I was making a good enough income to support myself. So I think that those are absolutely fair considerations. And so that roadmap, and also trying to just really evaluate kind of like what would excite you that, when you wake up the next day, right? What are the things that motivate you? Because at the end of any kind of like change and at the end of any, pivot, you've got to ask yourself, am I going to gain any sense of fulfillment or achievement at the end of this? So I would say that it's a very calculated strategy, and it's something that you got to really kind of think through. There's no like right answers, and just remember that if you decide to pivot and make a change, it doesn't mean you have to stay there, right? It could be a temporary change. It's something it's a building block to something bigger.
That's a really good point, Marie. With all the layoffs going on right now, as people try to rediscover themselves after a shock or after a change, and what's going on in the world and what's going on with technology, they're trying to pivot, or they're trying to figure out: do I go back to the same role? Do I now go to my passion? Do I quit my job? Do I start my own business? So that's a lot of deep internal assessment of yourself that people don't get to do. They just react. I think most people react because of, I need another job, otherwise I'm not gonna have a job. Everybody's getting laid off, so fear takes over. So really good advice. That as I also made that change, and we probably went through the same exercise, share. It's like I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna be my own boss. What does that look like? And I think those are hard choices. Those are difficult choices that you have to really consider all aspects of it. And then you also have your family. If you have family you're supporting, or it's your family going to support that change, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of factors to that. So thank you, Marie, for that advice. Think it through. Make sure that you have a plan, and that way you don't. There's no regrets.
I think too, a pivot doesn't have to be an all or nothing, right?
Right.
So I think what can be also interesting is looking, if someone is lucky enough to be in an organization that's broad and diverse, and there's lots of different opportunities within an organization, it could be a pivot within the organization itself, maybe a different role or a different thing that one can do. Maybe look for projects that could lead to something down the line, right? That might open up other opportunities in other departments or other areas, if that exists. I think the other thing is that it's, like I said, it's not an all or nothing. It can be a little bit of a toe in the water today with doing kind of fractional work or consulting work outside of it, right? So if that's a possibility, and I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but if there's a way to, and Marie, you're the one who turned me on to Upwork. We can talk about that a lot, the pros and cons of all that, which, by the way, I got something. I think they're going to call me next week on some consulting work. But the idea that there's a possibility to do small things if your job permits doing things outside, right? It's like kind of feeling it out a little bit before making that huge leap, having a little bit more of a cushion or an opportunity to see if that's really something that's desirable, right? Kind of feeling things out, that because I think there's so much of that opportunity today that we've never had before to be able to do things remotely and for other companies.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, so freelancing was a way for me to kind of get exposed to other industries. That was my starting point. So taking on very, very short-term, jobs. They were, there's a lot of jobs available out there from a freelancing standpoint. And sometimes people just need help for a few days or for a week. And so that was kind of my start into kind of moving towards consulting across other industries, because I started getting exposure in a very, very small way with freelancing. And then I started moving into more longer term consulting work. So a lot of the consulting work I do now is fractional. I'm a fractional COO for a few different companies right now. So that's kind of again, taking the core of my skills and how do you best apply that for other companies and their industries. There's a lot of startups that need help. And I would also suggest that there's also ways to do this. Like to your point, you can, if your current job can afford it, maybe picking up some additional freelance work at night, just even to just hone in your skills, into other ways that it could serve people. I would also suggest hey, if you're interested in the world of consulting, hey, reach out to any one of us.
Absolutely.
There's it's like, hey, how do you solve for problems in consulting? Give me an idea of some of the work that you do. Take me through a use case with a client. Those are honestly, open up your network a little bit, and there are people that are out there to help. So it's almost a little bit of unpaid internship, if you were to go back in time. But it's kind of but I think that those conversations are healthy, because sometimes I do feel that we work in a very insulated way. So we tend to stay within our same industries, right? We're working within the hash marks of what we've done from a role perspective. And I truly believe that sometimes people don't have the tendency to go outside of that and even drive to conversations. It's almost like they're in life sciences or they're in healthcare. It's too foreign of a area for me. But you know what? The more you drive into these conversations, you will find similarities as in terms of how you perceive business or how you might approach things. So it's, drive to those conversations.
I love the idea of saying, reach out to us or reach out to your network. And it isn't, I don't think that's a LinkedIn post. I think that's pick up the phone and send and call someone, or send them an email and say, hey, I'd really love to talk to you. I am so flattered. I think people are afraid to say, I don't want to bother this person, or I don't want to ask, right? I don't want to be a burden. I would be, for me personally, I'm going to say this to the world. I'm so flattered when someone says to me, hey, can I bounce something off of you? Can we talk about something? Right. I'm finding as I'm building my business and I'm reaching out to people that I've known for my entire life, I'm finding that people are also looking. And then what's really funny, and Daisy, you'll appreciate this, is immediately my recruiter hat goes on. So I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a former client of mine who wants to move from where he's living to be closer to his family. And so the conversation ended up being, okay, let me help you find a job. And I'm getting his CV and I'm sending it to other people I know, and I'm trying to help him. And I think that that is one of the most important things. Don't be afraid to ask. We talked about this. The worst thing that can happen is someone says no. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
And
absolutely the worst thing that can happen.
majority of the time, people want to help, right? And
Absolutely.
people, their own thoughts, their own expertise, because it's their passion. If you come across somebody that doesn't want to, then clearly that's just a grumpy person. But anyway, for the most part, people want to help, especially in the space we're in right now. But yeah, no, and this community, or this show that we do, actually, there's a lot of people that reach out now to go, hey, I really like that topic. I want you to talk some more about this particular topic, which is interesting. As we bring in guests, as we talk about the things, everything is tied to everything that's going on in the world, to everything that's going on in business, in technology, all that type of stuff. So I'm glad to see the same people come to the show, especially Miss Laura. She's our number one fan, I think.
Number one fan. Yay! We're gonna have to get merch. We're gonna absolutely have to get merch. Like, I think that's coming very soon. Maybe after episode 15, we'll have merch available. I think that the idea of what is a career today has shifted, right? So again, it's not right. And I think that and this is where, and I've talked about this, I've been very transparent about it, having applied to over 800 jobs in a year, getting no responses, not understanding what's going on, frustrated with the process. And what is it that people want today? We don't know. We have no insight to it. We don't know why they're hiring, who they're hiring. And I think that's too where that personal connection comes in. I just saw something again about how, another post about how does one really get a job today, right? What is that going to look like? And so I think that it comes down to building those relationships, asking people for help, not being afraid to say, look, I'm looking for work, or I'm looking for clients, or, and I'll say to all of you, we're looking for people that want to come join us in this conversation. And we love to have people's different points of view and ideas, and want to promote what people are doing and all of that, because I think that's where the future of this is going more than anything, especially coming out of COVID and all the AI stuff, whatever. I feel like we're getting better at the connecting than we were before all of this, right? We've that pendulum is shifting back again. At least I hope so.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that was like another reason getting into more freelance, to kind of then move across industries. You build instant connections just by like working with people or having conversations with people.
Yeah.
In the world of, we could kind of say it's AI, but in the world of, just posting to random jobs in LinkedIn, where, you might get a less than 1% hit rate on that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you're up against hundreds of candidates for the same job. And so there's no voices to be shared there. There's no, there's no like a real true auditing process, unless that HR person does want to have an initial phone call for you. And usually that'll last 15 minutes. So what are they going to learn about you in 15 minutes? And I think that that's kind of where it's a very tough job market, so to speak, when it comes to applying for jobs kind of randomly. And I think that your best foray into finding a job is really building personal connections. And, like, look, I still maintain the same connections that I have going back 25 years ago. In fact, I'm launching a startup with two individuals that I had worked with 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, so there's a value not just making immediate connections today, but also maintaining relationships.
That's so true, Laura. The other thing too is for those that let's say that are more into traditional roles, they're not comfortable or they don't really know if they want to do, you know, the journey that we're going through as consultants or as advisors, right? And
Hmm.
so for those that are listening that are more into how do I get to my next career, how do I get my next job, I'm blocked by ATS that's not going to the resume, that type of stuff. What what I see, it's really not that's not a confidence problem. It really is because internally. So I throw this question at you, Shira. What
Hmm.
companies do so that they can really see these people that are applying, and you know what are you seeing from your side internally when people complain about this type of stuff? I've never seen my resume is great. I match exactly what it looks like. What are you seeing, and what advice can you give organizations or people that are searching?
I mean, that was my life for close to
Mm,
2 years, right? I mean, I say it all the time. There were jobs I applied for. I said, wait, why is my CV and is the job description on the application, right? Why is that that's the perfect thing? And then I never heard anything.
mhm.
Listen, I come from old school recruiting, right? I come from recruiting before ATSs. I come from recruiting where people walked in the door and handed me a paper application. Yes, Laura, that was for you. And I don't understand how anyone can say that they're a recruiter, that they're in HR, that they are in that space and not create human connection. I don't understand how they can say they're being successful. I understand that the volume is crazy. I get that. I think that the application, when all I have to do is do this to apply, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of people that are applying to these jobs. And the technology is screening them out. So, Daisy, to your point, I don't even think they're getting down the line to recruiters. I think they're just not even seeing them. I think they're just going into black holes. I don't have the answer. If I did, I might not have my own business today because I probably would have gotten something. But I think that what I've learned in the last few years and really through my career is always being mindful of how do I need to be prepared to pivot? How do I need to think about if this isn't going to work, what am I going to do next? So
Mhm.
I've been in major international law firms. I've been in a global tech company with 20,000 employees, and I've owned my own business and everything in between, right? And there's no such thing as security anymore at any level. So we used to always say, always have your, your resume up to date. Now it's always have your LinkedIn up to date. And I think that we always have to be prepared for a shift and think about what that's going to look like and constantly be looking at how do I continue to grow? How do I continue to do different things and keep your network going? Like that, because that conversation, you never know what's going to come out of a conversation.
Very true. Very true. So it's a good pivot to our story of the day. Do you want to
Go
go with
ahead.
that?
You want to talk about it today? You talk about it today.
I don't even know where the story is right now. I'm looking for it. So,
Oh, you don't know it. So our outside in story today is a woman at 47. This is a CNBC article. And a woman at 47 said, she's 47 years old. And she said, I want to change my career. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so she left her job. So talk about the risk, Nicole, like actually taking the risk of leaving a job without another one in hand. Big risk. That's kind of major. So left her job in December, I think it was of 24, and of January of 25 said, okay, great, I'm going to go get a job. And throughout her career, she'd been really successful, had moved up in the ranks, had found other roles when she wanted them. That was never an issue. Well, guess what? This new generation of how we apply and what's happening hit her square in the face. And she started to talk about how she's not getting responses. She's sending applications everywhere. Nobody's talking to her. Nobody's responding to emails. And this ended up being a story on CNBC. And so she got very vocal about what that was about and told that truth out loud. And it resonated like crazy because so many of us have been through this. We've seen this constantly. So I think that I want to say this. We're not alone in this, right? I think that this is a very common story today. I think we're all feeling how difficult this market is and this shift in the way that we're doing things. And I think that we need to be honest about how it's changed and what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do differently? We can't just complain about what it was. We actually need to be doing things differently and figure out what that is going to look like. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, in the case of this, you know, people do leave jobs without without excuse me, being forced out the door, right? It's
Sure.
you know, I mean, we know that the layoffs are occurring all across, you know, the country, like bigger organizations, you know, even your Fortune 100 organizations, but there are people that make distinct choices to leave their position because, you know, maybe their position just doesn't fit their, you know, their lifestyle or their needs at that point in time. Maybe it's too much from a, you know, mental health burden. There's a lot of reasons why people leave jobs. It becomes though, if you're going to make that type of decision, if you have that lead time to make that decision, I would say then you need to come up with a bit of a strategy as to how you are going to leap to that next role. Whether
Mm,
you're working for an organization or you're working for yourself, there's got to be a little bit of planning because in this market, there's no guarantees, right?
no.
There's no guarantees that, you know, despite how talented you are, despite how much skill you bring to the table, all of your credentials, you can have all of that. You can have a great resume. I think I have a pretty damn good resume. I'm sure you guys do too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it absolutely doesn't mean that like somebody's going to look at your resume and be wowed and jazzed by it. You know, there's
No.
somebody out there that could be a little bit cheaper to get through the door. There could be somebody out there that's got even more credentials than you do. So
Right.
it's really, there's no guarantee. So if you have any lead time before you make a decision on leaving, then do yourself a favor, do a little bit of diligence as to what's out there in the marketplace, and then also plan appropriately.
Yeah. There was an interesting article today on LinkedIn. I can share it if anybody wants to DM me, and if you didn't see it. Fortune magazine came out with something that said, I think it was 40% of women today are own businesses, or 40% of the businesses in the US are now owned by women. And there is this significant shift to women starting their own businesses now. And I believe that that's stemming from the fact that um, they're not seeing the trajectory that they once thought they'd have, right? And let's be honest, I'm not man bashing here, but women are on a different trajectory. We have different priorities in our lives, some of us. And for women who leave the workforce to have children or for whatever reason, there becomes that whole issue of, you know, what does that mean and what does that look like for their careers? Or any other reason for that matter, not just women, but it's more women than not. And so they're seeing owning their own business and being an entrepreneur as the shift, as the pivot that they need to make because it's better for them. Right. And so that's a significant change, right? We're seeing it more and more and more that women are owning their own businesses, that they are becoming entrepreneurs, and they're not relying on corporate America to give them what they're looking for, which I think is interesting.
I think to your point and to Marie's point, the question for everybody watching is, are you still operating on embedded assumptions about your career, right? Or have you looked at the embodied reality of what's going on in the market, to Marie's point, know what's going out in the market, how the market actually sees you right now. So those are two different things, like your internal and then how you're going to represent yourself in that space too. So
Well, Daisy, I would say this. If you know, you've talked about this so many times. You've got me speaking your language today. I think for anybody who's looking to make a shift, go out to an AI platform and say, what do you know about me? Go incognito on a browser and go to Chat or go to Claude or go to Perplexity and say, what do you know about me? And see what it says, because oh my God, Catherine Bond, hello. Oh my gosh, talk about old friends. That's amazing. And Heather, by the way, thank you. And you're right, it is about transformation versus reinvention. I think that's really smart. And in that light, go out and say what's out there, right?
Mhm.
More than just the Google, because we all Googled ourselves, right? But actually ask AI, what do you know about me?
Yeah.
Because that's eye-opening.
And don't rely on LinkedIn as, that's going to tell your whole story, because there's no context in LinkedIn as well. And Marie can probably agree to this. It's just really it's just a placeholder for your titles. And so you have to tell your story within LinkedIn as well. The articles that you write, the narratives that you put out there for posts, those speak to also your expertise, not just a title. Because if they really read through if they're interested in what you're putting out there, they see you and they understand you based on those. So those are the things that I look at from the outside, and how you're going to be perception, but how you're representing yourself and how you are actually being very consistent in your branding. And Marie probably agree. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past; it's how you're branding yourself now and all the tasks that you're doing for your at your current state, at your current position.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct, Daisy, because even now, so if you are going through a shift right now, or if you have gone through a pivot and a career change, and maybe it was something that was unexpected, and you're just doing something even on a temporary basis, it's about the intentionality of how you present that in your resume. So it's like, what skill sets, what things are transferable based off of the job that you're doing today. And it could be a job that's several steps back from where you are now, but there's got to be something like there's some exposed learning there that you could then kind of communicate that within your resume, and also be able to tell people your story, because people have a tendency to create headlines for themselves, right? So they always tell you in LinkedIn, you got to have a headline, right? Like, that's great. So you can kind of, commit to paper, and you can create this beautiful headline for yourself. You're going to ask ChatGPT to help you with this. And I would say that all that is great, but are you able to recite that? So how, like, so the people talk about your elevator speech and so forth, like a lot of, like I said, a lot of people write that and kind of communicate that on paper, but how are you communicating that to people? If somebody asks you on the fly, what is it that you do? What have you done from a career perspective? And can you say it within a matter of a couple of sentences? So it's pretty interesting to try to challenge yourself. It's always like resume, words on paper versus what you say and project to people.
So our word is it authentic?
Yeah, that's going to say the same thing. Yeah. It goes back to being your true self and your passion, right? Because I tell people, ask me, like, you're going to just make me look fluffy. I said, no. I said, that's the last thing I want to do when I do your AEO. I said, I want you to be the real self. And then it also becomes an exercise where I don't have these experiences. I don't have these accolades. So I have them go back in time as far as 10 years ago and go, what courses have you taken over time? What problems have you solved for your clients that you probably are not telling it? You have case studies, use cases for problems that you've solved, for the jobs that you've done. So that's dig deep internally, where you've got praised for something. Those are accolades that they cannot take away from you. You did those. So we find ways to really bring out your truth in what I do anyway for branding them in the AEO AI space. So all that is, to your point, Marie, you can look good. AI can make you look really this incredible person, like you're the president of another country. But if you don't emulate that, if that's not really you, you're going to be found out no matter what. So please, people, do not take that AI will elevate you to the next level. That elevation that it will give you has to come with authenticity and your real self. So that's my parting word for that.
I love that. I think what also just came to mind for me, right, is sit down with an AI tool, with ChatGPT or Claude, whatever your tool of choice is, and have a conversation around who I am today. What does my resume say I am? And what else does that lead to in the world? Right? Kind of use these incredible tools to say, what else could I do? What opportunities are out there? Because I think, Marie, you started to say something that you were saying something that kind of led me down this path, which is we're so accustomed to saying, this is the role that I'm in, and this is the thing that I do. And so I'm going to look for that role. Or this is the thing I want to do. So I'm going to look for that. Well, guess what? What if there's something so unbelievably different out there, Daisy, to go from recruiting in healthcare to marketing, right? Would never be something that a person would go, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that, right? That's the thing I'm going to do. And so I think that the amazing thing, and we all love AI and we think it's great and all that good stuff. And so to have these tools available to us now, to have that conversation around, this is what I love. This is who I am. This is my experience. This is what I've accomplished. And what could I do differently, right? How could I make it different? What's out there for me? What are the opportunities for me? Spend a rainy day, a couple hours kind of walking through those exercises. I think as a matter of fact, I built a GPT a few weeks ago that I was doing a networking event for people looking for jobs. And I think I'll be happy to share. If anyone wants it, I'll give it to you. It's on ChatGPT that kind of does some of this work. But I think that that's where we are. Our mindset is, I do this, so I'm going to look for this job. I want to do this, so I'm only going to look for that job. But what else could possibly be out there that we're not even considering?
You know what? Take it a step further.
Love.
Eliminate the name of the company, eliminate your titles, and eliminate the years that you were there, and just serve up the bullet points of the accomplishments.
Right.
And then the focus is on the things that you've achieved and done, but it's not so much like there's not this inherent bias, created by like the title that you were in. So it's not going to pigeonhole you into these roles. So if you're going to go through this exercise with AI, I would say kind of focus in on some of the things that you've done throughout your career, but like, again, leave the biasness out.
I love that. That's so great. So take your CV, take out the titles, take out the job to companies. Just, this is what I've done in my life, right?
Yes.
These are my accomplishments. What could I possibly do that I haven't thought about?
It's an inventory of your skill sets, right?
Right.
And everything that you've accomplished. So have AI look at that in a way and process that in a way, again, with like eliminate the bias.
Right. And look at the possibilities. Consider it doesn't cost anything. Well, I want to take an opportunity because, again, the hour flies by, and I want people, Marie, if they want to reach out to you, to be able to find you. So, it would be great to please reach out to Marie and make those connections, because we love that. We think it's just so cool to be able to make new friends, to meet people along the way, to have those conversations. And so thank you for being with us today. And thank you for everything you've meant to me in the months that we've only known each other about 4 or 5 months, I think 6 months, something like that. But it's been really wonderful. And again, obviously, if you want to reach out to me or to Daisy, we also would love to hear from you. It would be our absolute pleasure for you to connect with us on LinkedIn or send us an email or get to know us. And we're happy to answer questions and help you in your journey. And obviously, if you want to come be on the show, we would love that as well. You can bring your point of view and we can talk about it. So
it's been amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Daisy, did you want to say anything as we go out today?
No, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. We had a very interactive group today. So thank you, everybody. We love it for supporting us. And Marie, thank you so much. Such valuable information. Love to connect, obviously, and continue to be in the network. So thank you so much. Please come back. Please come back. There's so much more.
This is fun. Thank you.
We would definitely love to have you back. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you back next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.